Before Chris Marek came into Amy Roloff's life in 2016, Amy was not a motorcycle person. She had spent 29 years married to Matt Roloff. She had raised 4 children on Roloff farms. She had built a career in reality television and business. She had done a lot of things, but she had not spent significant time on the back of a motorcycle. Motorcycles, for most of her adult life, had been someone else's hobby. Then she went to a singles mixer in 2016. She met Chris Marek. Chris invited her on a motorcycle ride for their first date. Amy said yes. And that first ride, which she has described as one of the more thrilling experiences of her life, unlocked something. It unlocked adventure. It unlocked a version of Amy Roloff that had been dormant for decades. It unlocked the part of her that wanted to see the country, feel the wind, take risks, and live in a way she had not been able to live during her marriage. Tonight on LPBW Update, we are walking through Amy Roloff and Chris Marek's complete motorcycle travel history. The first date ride, the Oregon, Washington, and Canada trip in the summer of 2017. The multi-thousand-mile trips in the years that followed. The 2022 18-day journey through Canada, Yukon Territory, and Alaska. The 2023 Yellowstone trip that took them through Idaho. And the way motorcycles became not just a hobby for Chris, but a shared passion that has defined the entire second half of Amy's adult life. Because Amy Roloff's motorcycle story is one of the most quietly beautiful reinvention stories in reality television, and it deserves to be told properly. The first significant multi-day motorcycle trip Amy and Chris took together happened in the summer of 2017, just months into their public dating. Chris had been an avid motorcycle rider for years. He had ridden all over the Pacific Northwest. He had done thousands of miles on his bike. When he and Amy started dating, one of the first things he wanted to share with her was the experience of a long ride. He suggested they take a trip across Oregon, Washington, and Canada. Amy agreed. The trip, which spanned multiple states and provinces, was Amy's first real taste of long-distance motorcycle travel. She has said in interviews that she was scared but exhilarated. She was 54 years old at the time. She had never done anything like this, and she loved it. The trip was documented on social media as it happened. Amy posted photos from various stops. She talked about the scenery. She talked about how Chris was such a careful and competent rider that she never felt unsafe. She talked about the sense of freedom that came from being on the road for days at a time, with nothing to do but see the next stretch of highway. That 2017 trip did have one complication. It coincided with the last weeks of Audrey Roloff's pregnancy with Ember. Jeremy and Audrey were expecting their first child. Amy's first grandchild from Jeremy's side of the family was going to arrive any day. Some fans criticized Amy for going on a long motorcycle trip so close to the birth of her granddaughter. Amy defended the timing. She said she and Chris had planned the trip in advance and that Ember, thankfully, waited to arrive until Amy was back home. Ember was born on September 10, 2017, a few weeks after the trip ended. Amy was there for Ember's birth, but the criticism about the trip's timing was a preview of how fans would evaluate Amy's adventurous second life. Some would celebrate her for finding new joy. Others would question her choices as a grandmother. Amy has generally chosen to celebrate her own choices rather than defend them, which has been one of her defining features in the post-divorce era. The 2017 trip was just the beginning. Over the following years, Amy and Chris continued to take motorcycle trips together. Some were short weekend rides through the Oregon coast or the Cascade Mountains. Others were multi-week adventures. Amy has said in various interviews that she and Chris plan to eventually ride to Alaska and back. That dream, mentioned by Chris to fans while giving a tour of Roloff Farms during Halloween of 2021, was described as a trip of approximately 3,000 miles that would take just over 3 weeks. It was the kind of ambitious ride that most motorcycle enthusiasts dream about, but never actually do. Amy and Chris made it real. In the summer of 2022, Amy and Chris completed an 18-day motorcycle trip that took them from Oregon, north to Canada, through the Yukon Territory, and into Alaska. They visited Hudson's Hope in British Columbia. They stopped in the Bavarian-themed village of Leavenworth in Washington state. They rode through the vast, isolated highways of the Yukon Territory. They reached historic downtown Skagway, Alaska, a small town of just over 1,000 year-round residents that was the gateway to the Klondike Gold Rush in the late 1890s. Amy documented the trip extensively on Instagram. She shared photos of herself and Chris posing with their motorcycle at various stops. She shared photos of the scenery, which she described as breathtaking. She shared photos of small towns and roadside attractions and dinners at local restaurants. Her fans loved it. The comments on her posts were filled with encouragement, envy, and admiration. Amy, at 59 years old, was living the kind of life most people fantasize about but never achieve. She was on the road. She was with her husband. She was seeing the country. She was doing it all while being one of the most recognizable little-person women in America. Upon returning from the 2022 18-day trip, Amy shared a selfie of herself and Chris flexing their arms in front of their motorcycle. She talked about what she and Chris were most excited to do at home. She said they wanted to shower, they wanted to relax, and they wanted to sleep in their own bed. The trip had been fabulous, she said, but they were both ready to be home. That kind of honest post-trip reflection is Amy at her most relatable. She was not pretending the trip had been perfect. She was acknowledging that 18 days on a motorcycle, no matter how beautiful the scenery, is exhausting, and she was grateful to be home. In 2023, Amy and Chris took another significant motorcycle trip. This one was to Yellowstone. They rode from Oregon through Idaho, spent time in Yellowstone National Park, and rode back through various small towns in the region. Amy posted a video from Salmon, Idaho, heading to Meridian, Idaho, saying that they were on their way back home. Their next stops were Meridian, and then the Painted Hills in Oregon, and then home. Amy playfully asked Chris on camera if they were anxious to get home. Chris agreed. Amy explained to viewers that Chris had done so much of the driving, which required attention and focus. She acknowledged that even though the trip had been fabulous, the last few days had made them more anxious to get home. That video captured the very human dimension of long motorcycle trips. Yes, they are amazing. Yes, they are freeing. Yes, they are memorable. But by the last few days, you are ready to sleep in your own bed and eat your own food and stop being on the road. The role of Chris in these motorcycle trips has been essential. Chris has done the majority of the driving. He is the pilot. Amy has been the passenger. That division of labor makes sense given Amy's short stature. Standard motorcycles are not designed to be operated by 4-foot 2-inch riders. Amy could theoretically ride her own bike if it was custom built for her, but there is no practical reason to when she has Chris. Chris is a skilled, experienced rider. He has spent decades on motorcycles. He can navigate difficult roads. He can handle long distances. He can make Amy feel safe. That combination of skill and safety has allowed Amy to embrace motorcycle travel in a way she never could have on her own. Chris has given her the gift of being able to see the country from the back of a motorcycle without having to worry about operating it herself. Amy has, in various interviews and social media posts, talked about what motorcycle travel means to her. She has said it gives her a sense of freedom she did not have during her marriage to Matt. She has said it allows her to see the world in a way that car travel cannot match. She has said the wind, the sound, the intimacy of being on a bike with the man she loves, all of it combines into a specific kind of experience that no other form of travel provides. She has also said, in her more reflective moments, that the trips have been healing. They have been part of the way she has processed her divorce, built her second life, and become the version of herself she wanted to become in her 60s. Motorcycles, unlikely as it may sound, have been one of the primary tools in Amy Roloff's post-divorce reinvention. Chris has been generous in the way he has shared his passion with Amy. He could have kept motorcycles as his own hobby. He could have insisted on going on solo trips or trips with his motorcycle friends. Instead, he chose to include Amy in every ride. He chose to make motorcycling a shared activity. He chose to build the accessories and comfort features that would make long trips manageable for a smaller passenger. That kind of generosity in a marriage is worth naming. It is what makes Chris the right partner for Amy. He does not just tolerate her interests. He does not just include her when convenient. He actively builds his life around sharing his interests with her. That is a specific kind of love, and it has produced over the years a shared library of motorcycle memories that neither of them could have accumulated alone. Looking at Amy and Chris in 2026, they are still riding. They still take trips together. They still post their adventures on Instagram. The motorcycle has become as much a part of their identity as a couple as their home in Hillsboro or their marriage on Roloff farms in 2021. Whatever comes next in their lives, motorcycles will be part of it. Amy has said publicly that she wants to keep riding for as long as she can physically do it. Chris has said he agrees. The dream of continued motorcycle adventures into their late 60s and beyond is not just a fantasy. It is a plan they are actively living. What can we learn from Amy's motorcycle journey? A few things. First, that it is never too late to develop a new passion. Amy was 54 when she first got on a motorcycle. That is older than most people ever consider starting something new. She embraced it anyway. Second, that a good partner can unlock parts of you that were dormant. Chris did not just ask Amy to ride with him. He gave her the confidence and the safety net to say yes. That kind of partnership dynamic is transformative. Third, that reinvention is possible at any age. Amy has become someone she was not before her divorce. She is more adventurous. She is more spontaneous. She is more willing to embrace the physical world. And motorcycles have been one of the primary vehicles, literally and figuratively, of that reinvention. So I want to know what you think. Would you take an 18-day motorcycle trip with your spouse in your 60s? Do you love Amy's post-divorce adventurous side? And do you think motorcycles have been one of the key ingredients in what makes her marriage to Chris work so well? Drop your thoughts below. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell for our weekly Roloff family stories. I will see you on.